Hey there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace. This is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
If you guys are binging this, you've heard us say this 1,000,001 times.
And if you're not binging this and you go week to week, you can tell that we are a day late. And
We're also awake.
Yeah, so that's a good thing. I think the phrase is day late, dollar short. We're more than $1 short. I will say that. We're pretty broke right now. But still, we are here, so we're only 24 hours late. Thank you all for understanding. But like Robin said, we're awake, we're alert. It's going to be a better episode because of it. So
I agree. I think that's nice when we get to record a little earlier in the night and not, at 2 a.m. It's I think it's much better content because we're awake to interact with each other. But
there have been instances where we'll be reading our topics while the other person is falling asleep. And I think part of the interaction that happens between us is something that folks like, in the show, and that can't happen when I'm editing out snoring because we're so tired. And I think the hiatus that we took earlier this year really taught us, quality content is better than, rushed content.
Rushing.
Yeah, and, taking care of ourselves is something that's important so we don't burn out. So we're always going to try and hit Tuesday, And that'll be a little bit easier further down the road, but as of right now, things are, a little bit crazy. Lots of traveling. Robin came out to Vegas this past weekend, so it was really nice to see her. And while you might think, you guys should just record in the same room, she does have to do the drive back to California, which is kind of a nightmare sometimes. It can take between 3.5 to 8 hours, depending on traffic. So we always want to make sure, I'm not going to ask Robin, hey, can we go record this thing with the very limited amount of time we have together and then go ahead and drive home super tired type of thing. So, it's just, an extra day, no big deal. Little thing to brighten up your Wednesday, and your podcast hosts are much happier and healthier because of it. So we sincerely hope you understand.
All right. This week, I'm going to be doing some true crime. I'm going to be doing a disappearance that I have not covered yet. It would be weird if I did one that I had covered before.
Unless they found the person. That would make sense to cover it again.
Oh, that would be fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
So this week I'm going to be covering haunted caves. I think we've covered some as an ancillary part of previous topics, but never these ones that I'm about to tell you about. It's almost like a follow-up to Hollow Earth. I almost said Haunted Earth. All of Earth is haunted. All human beings have died here.
I was going to say, we bury people within our Earth's surface, so
obviously it's haunted. But yeah, I'm going to be covering some haunted caves for you all this time. So, and also what's really cool is that, this isn't cool, but my mom has been telling me about this YouTube channel she discovered. We just switched from Cox Cable to YouTube TV, and YouTube TV is fantastic, but she's also been looking at YouTube channels. And one of them is called Adventures with Purpose. I think it's something along those lines where these folks were trying to clean up waterways, and they got all this equipment together, and they started slowly, accidentally discovering lots of cars that had missing people in them. And I think at this point they have 22 or 23 missing people, including one that's very very recent. They actually just found this girl. So she was watching an episode today, and I was down there, and then Robin was like, I'm going to cover missing persons. And then I'm watching this YouTube video where they are searching around the body, these bodies of water near this missing person's house, and they find their car. So it's kind of fascinating, how that kind of overlapped with my mom finding this new YouTube channel to watch within the last couple weeks, and then you decide you're going to cover missing persons, and then a missing persons was just found. So anyways, I'll stop talking right now. I'll shut up, and then Robin can take over and give us her topic.
All right. So I think I need to check out that YouTube channel because I would totally be interested in that. So you're going to have to tell me what it's called again later. So it's genuinely been quite a while since I've done a true crime topic, and mysterious disappearance just seems the right amount of creepy to kind of get back into the true crime mood. And even more, this one's really not that long ago. And I say that, but it's from 2001, and 2001 was fucking 21 years ago. So,
Oh my God. I feel so old. I feel I just aged like the guy from Last Crusade.
I remember living through Y2K, and everyone was so freaked out. And now 2001 is 21 years ago. It's just, it's rough to think about.
If only 1999 folks knew what 2020 was going to be like.
So before we get started into our topics today, I wanted to give a shout out to Carl and Ethan for being our super awesome patrons that definitely give big supports each month over at patreon.com/Scaryish podcast. And you too can be part of the shout out tier if you head on over and check it out. But thank you guys so much for helping keep this podcast going. Every single one of you patrons out there who donate and help support us. You guys are awesome.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Carl, Ethan. You guys are amazing.
So my topic is about Branson Kayne Perry, who was born on February 24th, 1981. So not that much older than you are.
Rude. Thanks, though.
And grew up in Skidmore, Missouri. He actually suffered from tachycardia. And tachycardia is like a condition that makes your heart race excessively, which is kind of terrifying. But it's kind of crazy to me because he was a black belt in Hapkido, which is like Korean martial arts.
Isn't it like joint locks and stuff like that?
Yeah. I'd never heard of it before.
I think my brother used to be into it back in the day, so...
Really?
He was into a lot of creative ways to hurt me, and I'm pretty sure I've heard of that one before, so...
I've only taken Taekwondo. I didn't know what this was before. But he graduated high school in 1999, speaking of 1999. And after that, he worked around doing odd jobs. He was a roofer for a while until he was let go. So after that, he worked helping like a traveling petting zoo, which sounds fun. Just pretty random things. I mean, he just graduated high school, so you don't have a lot of skills and people aren't just going to be like, yeah, you can work for me doing whatever, right? But in 2001, his parents had recently divorced and he was living with his dad, Bob. And he was living just, a pretty average life, nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary. That is until April 7th, 2001. So April 7th, he goes over to visit his neighbor, Jason Bierman. And during this visit, Bierman supposedly gave him an unidentified drug. After being dosed, according to an author of true crime books like Diane Fanning, a true crime expert, according to her, he stripped naked and danced around Bierman's home and then proceeded to shave his junk and then quote unquote participated in sexual activity with him. So the next day he sobers up and is absolutely humiliated, totally ashamed of himself. He tells his dad what happened and his dad's furious. His dad had always suspected that his son was gay, but he wasn't furious with his son. He was furious with Bierman for taking advantage of him.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. I was like getting kind of annoyed that it was going to be like yet another homophobic parent.
No. He was just mad that this other person would drug his son like that. But no confrontation ever took place, which kind of adds another layer to what happens next. So, on the afternoon of April 11th, 2001, Branson walks out of his house after telling a friend that he had over that he would just be taking some jumper cables and putting it back out in his shed. He walks out and mysteriously disappears. He's never seen again.
Wow.
His friend Jenna, or Gina, depends on which spelling it's written as.
How do you spell it?
It's Jena.
Jena?
But some sources write it as Gena. Okay. I don't know why.
Interesting.
I think it's Jenna. I don't know.
Another layer to the mystery.
Well, so this friend is over to help clean the house since his dad, Bob, had been hospitalized and was going to come home soon. So while they're cleaning, there are two guys outside working on Bob's car, changing out his alternator. 3 p.m. rolls around and Perry walks out to the shed that is literally next to the house. And from the house to the shed, it's like somewhere between there, which is really no distance from each other at all, really. He disappears, which is absolutely mind-boggling. He disappears within eyesight of these two guys fixing his dad's car.
Wow.
And it just makes me think, like, where could he have possibly gone in that time span? Apparently, Jenna just assumed that Branson had just went somewhere. And so they went home without thinking anything of it. They're just like, oh, he probably went off somewhere. I'm just going to go home. No use hanging out in someone else's house.
It might sound suspicious, but like I have friends who were very notorious for just disappearing. Like you could be at a party with them. Like as long as they drove separate or had the means and opportunity to do so, they would just leave and they would not tell anyone they were leaving. Like
their own house?
Like not their own house. They've done it before, but usually if you were somewhere else, like they would just bail. But yeah, like I know a couple of people like parties at their own house. Like they just decided they were like going to go get food or they were going to go to a store to get like drinks or something like that. But they didn't tell anyone. They were just like, they just wanted to leave. Like they got to the point like with their social interaction where if they were a vampire, they would have burst into a fucking, I was going to say flock of, but just a giant group of, I don't know what the name is for it.
Just a flock of seagulls. Just a big flock of seagulls.
You know how vampires burst into flocks of seagulls and they ran so far away.
All right. So the next day, Branson's grandmother, Joanne, stops by and finds that no one's home. The doors are unlocked. She thinks it's strange, but she goes on with her day. She asks Bob, his dad, if Branson had gone to visit him at the hospital, to which he said, like, he hasn't, which is odd. So this sets off some alarms because Branson had gone to visit him in the hospital every single night that he had been in there. So it was worrisome that he hadn't gone to visit yet. So over the next several days, she keeps calling the house, hoping that someone would answer eventually. And no one does. So she calls his mother, Rebecca, and his mom hadn't heard anything from him either. Days after that, on April 16th, Bob is released from the hospital, and he and Rebecca file a missing persons report, understandably. All his belongings had been left behind. So this led to authorities thinking that there had to be some foul play involved. Why else would he leave everything at home and just disappear? Search parties are organized by county police, and they search within a 15-mile radius around the home. That's a big span around the area.
It makes sense, though, because he's been missing for quite some time at that point, right?
For days, yeah. So they search fields, farms, they search abandoned buildings. They're trying to find like oil wells, things like that he could fall into, you know. And they search everything and they find no evidence of him being anywhere. And supposedly during this initial search, they weren't able to locate the jumper cables that he was supposed to be returning to the shed. But then 2 weeks later, they're found just inside the door. So I find that highly suspicious just because, like, you have these huge search parties and you're searching so far and no one notices that they're right there, you know? It kind of smells a little fishy to me, but, you know, I can't really say, right? I wasn't there. I don't know. I don't have the evidence in my hand.
I mean, for sure, it's definitely fishy that something that's such an important piece of evidence took so long to find. Then it was like, oh, it was just right here the whole time.
Yeah. So his disappearance also just so happened to be mere days before he was set to go to rehab. So his aunt was saying he was, you know, on drugs. He told her, like, I'm going to quit drugs. They set him up to go to rehab, and he disappears before that. And that's like days, you know, he disappears days after the other drug incident. So it's very odd, all this stuff happening.
Maybe the shed was like his place to go to like sneak away and like do drugs. And like on his way out there, he just decided like, I'm not going to rehab, and then bounced.
I don't think the shed was like big enough to go into and, you know, hang out and do drugs. But, you know, maybe it is. I couldn't tell you.
You don't need much space to do drugs. You know, you maybe just hid behind it. It's not like he's going out there like cook up meth or anything like that. You need like a full-blown RV or something like that. I've watched Breaking Bad before.
I've never watched Breaking Bad. So for a month and a half.
What the hell are you doing with your life? It's such a good show, man.
So for a month and a half, over 100 people are interviewed about Branson's disappearance. And at first, his father, Bob, thought that he may have just left to stay with his friends in Kansas. And he thought that maybe he had hitchhiked since he didn't have a working car at the time. I don't know how far Kansas is from Missouri. I don't know.
Not terribly far.
Okay, but would you leave everything you own and hitchhike? You know what I mean?
I mean,
it's
like,
2001.
I'm pretty sure they share a border. So it would be like if me, someone who grew up in Northwest Indiana, was like, I'm going to go stay with my friends in Illinois. And yeah, I could probably do that and leave everything in my apartment. But it doesn't change the fact that I would have told someone I was doing that. But what
about would you leave your wallet or your cell phone?
Hell no. Like, before I move into a different room, I check to see if I have my cell phone. Like, there's no way I'm going to go to a different state without my cell phone.
I mean, they had cell phones in 2001, right? That was a thing.
Yeah, they had Snake on them, and they were indestructible. Like, if you had a Nokia, you could basically stop a train with it. So
Jenna Crawford, who'd been over at the house that day, says that they heard him shouting up to them through the window as he was walking outside. So what some sources I read said was that he did something strange out of nowhere. Like, all of a sudden, he just grabbed something out of a cabinet and then decided to go outside. And when he comes back, he doesn't tell Crawford what he grabbed or why he left. So then, after that, Crawford goes to take a shower after they finish cleaning the house a little bit, sees one of the mechanics going through a kitchen cabinet. She asks the mechanic, like, what are you searching for? You know what I mean? And he says it's nothing, and he goes back outside. Crawford then goes upstairs to rest. You know, after cleaning the house, you take a shower, you want to go chill out. And she looks outside the window. It's around 3 p.m. She calls out, Branson, what are you doing? To that, he shouts up, I'm going to put away the jumper cables, then run out for a bit. I'll be back in a few minutes. And after that, he's never seen again. But Crawford also admits to police that Branson had recently been experimenting with marijuana and amphetamines, which is something that his family kind of already knew he was struggling with.
One of those things is not something that I would anticipate would cause
one of these things is not like the other.
And the other one is something that could lead to something dangerous. I'm just saying, I've known a lot of stoners in my day. I've never had to worry about them, like, disappearing. Maybe just staying put for way too long is something that I've had to worry. Like, a person sat on a couch for way more hours than they should have, type of thing. The amphetamines thing, though, don't know a lot of people who have fucked around with that, but I imagine that's more towards the thing that they were concerned about.
So one of Branson's family members told police that he had actually had a bottle of Valium on him that day that he disappeared. And I want to assume that that's the aunt that's still around that knows a little bit more about the whole drug addiction type thing with the rehab. Not sure how relevant it is that he had Valium on him, but who knows? Police made any quote-unquote drug acquaintances take a polygraph test and asked them if they had seen him, and they all said no. They all passed this polygraph test, but we know now, you know, in 2022, that those are not always accurate, and you can cheat a polygraph test.
So inaccurate, they are inadmissible in court as evidence. So,
yeah,
like, take everything that comes from a polygraph with a grain of salt.
So they all pass this test, but police go down this drug route for a while, thinking that it might have had something to do with his disappearance. But going down this route didn't come up with anything substantial, despite there having had been rumors that he had owed drug dealers money. So, you know, there's that. 2 years later, on April 11th, 2003, a man named Jack Wayne Rogers, a 59-year-old Presbyterian minister and Boy Scout leader, gets arrested. He gets arrested for first-degree assault and practicing medicine without a license.
Uh-oh.
What, pray tell, was this medicine?
Amphetamine.
He removed a trans woman's genitals in a makeshift gender reassignment surgery.
What the fuck? I was not expecting that.
So he doesn't do the surgery in a clean medical area or anything. He does it in a hotel. It's just so dumb. And he was caught because as someone without a medical license, he has no idea what he's doing. So he has no medical license. He's trying to do this surgery, quote unquote surgery. He does not know how to stop the bleeding during this procedure. That's how this guy gets caught. So while they're investigating Rogers, they discover child porn on his computer.
Of course.
And I want to remind you folks that this guy was a Presbyterian minister and a Boy Scout leader. Okay. Other things they find on his computer. Evidence that he had posted on various message boards using usernames like Buggerbutt and Oh Hail Satan and Extreme Body Mods.
What?
And so he posts on these various message boards using these usernames. And in these posts, he would describe the graphic torture and assault of men. And he went so far as to discuss the cannibalization
oh my god
of male genitalia, like of men that he had castrated. And the fact that he was arrested while literally in the act of cutting off someone's genitals, it's not surprising to me. It's like, what was he planning on doing with that afterwards? Probably eat it. Blech.
This has taken a very dark turn.
Yes.
Into pedophile / cannibal town, and I did not see this coming.
So, yeah, it's real fucked up. When I saw this, or like, I came across this topic and I was like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? It's just mind-blowing. Okay, so there were very detailed accounts of things that Rogers himself claimed he did, including the rape, torture, and murder of a blonde hitchhiker.
Oh,
supposedly
no.
having buried this victim in a remote area in the Ozarks. So despite these discoveries, Rogers denies ever having known Branson, and he claims that his posts were pure fantasy and they were just writing exercises.
For shit.
Even though the police thought otherwise. So further searches find a turtle claw necklace in one of his cars that resembles something that Branson actually owned. There's that. But April 2004, Rogers is convicted and sentenced to 17 years in prison for assault and 7 years for performing that illegal surgery.
So why would he ever admit when they're investigating this? If he knows he's going to actually get out at some point, you know? Why would he admit that he knew the person that is missing that seems to be completely like overlapping with the things that he's done and admitted to? Like, obviously he's full of shit.
He gets an additional 30 years for the child pornography. And all of these things kind of run concurrently to each other. And
Wait, concurrently? So not consecutive. So he's running these sentences all at the same time?
All at the same time.
That's
so he gets out in like 30
They should
years.
be stacked one after the other so he never gets out.
Yeah,
that's
so
awful.
he gets out in 30 years from that point.
Oh
I
my
think.
god.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I think it's like 30. It's like 17 years, and then the 7 and 30 are concurrent. It's like one of those. One or the other is concurrent.
So there's one sentence, and then the other two happen after that one.
Yeah,
but those two okay. Well, hopefully this guy dies in jail.
During this sentencing, Branson's mother begs for Rogers to tell them where their son is. But Rogers continues to deny being responsible for his disappearance. And his earliest release date is October 30th, 2028. That's if he gets like all his, what are those things called?
Time off for good behavior.
Yeah, stuff like that. So that's the earliest date he could get is October 30th, 2028. Which is not too far in the future.
Yeah,
that's
6
years from now. So it'll go by in a flash because my life seems to be going by in a flash. But he'll be 83 years old in 2028. So, in June of 2009, law enforcement performed an excavation of a site in Quitman, Missouri, after having received a quote-unquote credible tip that his body may have been buried there. And over the span of 2 days, they had excavators dig a hole that was about 23 feet deep and around 20 or 40 feet around, but they still found nothing. In 2010, his mother offers a $20,000 reward for any information that could lead to his whereabouts, and nothing came of that. She dies in February of 2011.
Oh my God.
I think she had cancer, like a melanoma, so she was battling cancer. She was buried beside an empty plot for Branson that lists his date of death as April 11th, 2001, the day he disappeared. So hopefully they can find him one day, you know, and then they can be buried next to each other. But an article posted earlier this year by The Sun states that a New Jersey police officer named Michael Kurz and a Nottoway County Sheriff Randy Strong believe that his disappearance has a strong connection to the drug trade, and they think that they have found a suspect that they think may have done it, but they don't have enough evidence quite yet to make an arrest. So they want to make sure they have all their ducks in a row before they even attempt to arrest this guy or girl. You know, I don't know who it is.
Good thing they're taking 21 fucking years to get those ducks in a row.
So they think that so this New Jersey police officer, he has nothing to do with this case. Like, he saw the reports come up, right? The news. And he's like, I need to look more into this. So all of his free time, he spends trying to look into this more. He posts on social media. He tries to do research, even taking vacations to the area, you know, to try and figure things out. And so he starts working with this sheriff. And so they've worked together to try and figure out something, you know, that could lead to an arrest. But they think that the body has to be found in order for them to have like a definitive conviction for sure, which is so upsetting. But Branson's aunt thinks that people are too scared to come forward with any evidence that might help the case because they're afraid that if they say anything, they're going to get killed, which is kind of scary in and of itself. Like, if people do know and they're just scared of this drug ring in Missouri, very interesting. But it's really sad. Disappearances happen all the time, just like this one. And a lot of them go unsolved. And I think they all deserve attention and they all deserve like their chance to be found. This is just one of those that gained a lot of national attention. And I wish, you know, all these other people that disappear on a daily basis can get the attention they need. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard because there's so many people. I have stuff in my script about disappearances too, and there's quite a few of them, and it's scary to think how many people are lost and are never found. So it's a really sad story. The worst part about stuff when you hear this is, you know, someone knows what happened, you know? Like when we cover the Lawrence Spreer one, like someone knows to this day where she is. Someone knows to this day what happened to this person. And it's like really upsetting that no one's figured it out yet or someone hasn't come forward. And it's sickening to know that that guy's mom died without knowing. That's so sad. Yeah. Like, it's just so seriously sad. So either way, thank you for covering it that, you know, people know, and, you know, who knows, maybe we do have an update on a future episode where it's like, hey, they found the person. So we can only hope. All right. So before we move into my topic, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And we're back. So this week, I actually wanted to do kind of a follow-up on last week's topic. That was the inspiration for this week's topic. For those of you who don't remember or haven't listened to it yet, last week I covered Hollow Earth, and it turns out it's totally real. Cracked it, 100% solved, 100% confirmed. Not really. If you want to hear about it, pop over there once this episode is over and give it a listen. At one point, though, I mentioned how creepy it is. There's like this Instagram post, I think it's TikTok, I don't know, that made its way through the social media system where it's like the cave system of the United States of America overlaid with the locations of disappeared people. So people that went missing, and how those maps are like identical and how creepy it is. So I thought, hey, let's cover some of those caves. So, dear listener, I present to you haunted caves. And yes, haunted, not like cave disappearances. I'm calling it haunted caves. So there are a bunch of disappearances that we could get into, but Robin already covered one of those tonight. So I'm going to cover some of these cave systems that are considered to be haunted and why they are. Before I get to that, though, I'm going to let you know why I didn't call this one cave disappearances, and something that more goes along with the cave system overlapping with that disappearance map, because obviously that seems like something that people should talk about more. The reason I'm not covering that specifically is because I decided to do a little fact checking on those two maps, and it turns out while the map of the cave system is accurate, the map of the disappearances that overlaps with it isn't really accurate. That's actually not a map of all the people who have gone missing in the United States. It's a map made by someone with the criteria that the disappearances were considered quote-unquote strange and occurred near national parks. So it's basically a map where someone said, here are the cave systems, and here are the missing people cases at cave systems. So of course they overlap with one another. The map was literally made from someone else, then stolen, edited slightly, and then put up on social medias so that some conspiracy theorists could run wild with this idea that there was like an underground society basically taking people.
I'm really glad you checked that, because I totally believed that.
I'm very happy too, because that map accounts for around 1,400 missing people. That was originally made by someone else entirely, who wrote a book about the disappearances that happen around the cave systems. And to compare that 1,400 missing persons cases versus 600,000 people that go missing in the United States every year. So that map does not account for 586,000 missing people cases. And you can kind of tell when you notice that there's some major metropolitan areas that are completely left off that map. Like, I think Detroit is not even on that map at all. Like, not a single dot in Detroit where people go missing a lot. The majority of missing people cases in the United States are actually resolved. People actually get found. So if you need a little bit of hope after the depressing topic that was Robin's,
say, thanks.
And the way I'm starting out mine, people do get found, but there are still tens of thousands of people who are not. Even if the resolution percentage is 85% of missing people's cases being found, that means 15% of 600,000 people, which is 90,000 people. And I just made up the 85% thing, but just as an example. Okay. Tens of thousands of people every year go missing and are not found. So there's a lot of people that go missing in the U.S. They just also happen to go missing around the cave system, and someone tried to capitalize on that with a bullshit conspiracy theory, which is, by the way, why I fucking hate conspiracy theories, because it always comes back to someone being completely full of shit for clout or attention. But that doesn't mean those caves aren't creepy as fuck. I mean, they're the entrance to Hollow Earth, so obviously they're going to be creepy and mysterious in some way, shape, or form. So, one of the places I want to cover tonight is called Robbers Cave State Park. And, I mean, with a name like Robbers Cave, it's gotta be cool, right? Robbers Cave is actually located in Oklahoma. For those of you who don't know, that's spelled Oklahoma, Oklahoma, yeah. Apparently that's from Oklahoma, the musical. I'm just quoting the movie Twister, where one of the cars, when they're chasing the tornadoes, is singing that song from the musical Oklahoma. I've never actually seen Oklahoma. I've just seen Twister a billion fucking times. Anyways, Robbers Cave is a system of caves that was used during the Civil War, in fact. It was used for a lot of things, but in the Civil War, it was most notable for being this neutral territory where deserters, where Union and Confederate soldiers would basically say, I don't want to fight anymore. They would abandon and find some place to hide, and they would wind up, I mean, not all of them, but obviously people in this area would wind up in this cave system to, hide from the army and just say, we don't want to do this anymore. After the Civil War, though, it wound up getting its name from some of the outlaws that used it, and they would visit it to avoid the law or occasionally hide stolen goods. Outlaws like Belle Starr, which sounds kind of like a porn star name, who was a lady outlaw, as well as some dude who I've never heard of before named Jesse James. It's said...
Oh, that's sarcasm, right? Because you've heard of Jesse
obviously.
James. Okay.
Yeah. It's said that Robbers Cave was a rendezvous point for various gangs, including the James Younger Gang. Before all of this, though, it was a location used by the Pawnee Native Americans for various different things. There is a campsite nearby to this day, and you can stay there if you'd like, and tours that you can take in the caves themselves. Individuals who visit the site, and especially those who go into the caves, claim they can hear the sound of drums in the dark. Some
That's scary.
also state they have heard what sounds like chanting and singing coming from deep within the caves, in particular places where the tours don't or won't go.
Okay. See, some of that stuff, I'm like, someone's hanging out in the caves. People hang out in the
it
caves.
could totally be someone faking it, like it's 100% a possibility, but at the same time, like, you're going to go deeper into a super dark cave system to check and see, like, if there's someone hanging out, or if there's like a tape recorder playing the sounds of like drums or something like that.
Nope.
During tours,
That's
though,
like as above, so below. I'm not going down there.
Fuck that. During tours, though, folks state that they can hear things aside from chanting and singing, things like screaming, crying, laughter, and even conversations, sometimes in languages they don't recognize, sometimes arguments. There is one passage within this cave system that has been sealed off, and folks state that during the tour, if you reach this particular part it's bricked off, if you press your ear to the bricks, you can hear moaning coming from behind the wall, which really begs the question of why they bricked it off. And yes, it's supposed to be the creepy type of moaning, not the fun kind. Unless creepy moaning for you is the fun kind. I'm not here to yuck your yum or judge you, pervert. And speaking of moaning, there's an entire adventure park dedicated to it. It's literally called Moaning Caverns Adventure Park. It's in a place called Velocity, California. This place is essentially a cavern and a burial site. So archaeologists have found bones, which for whatever reason, when I was typing out my script, I spelled BOANS. So it's like bones mixed with moans.
Oh my God.
They have found bones in these caverns that date back 12,000 years that have been authenticated. So people have been either dying in here or burying their dead for quite a long time. There have been lots of bones recovered from this site. Some people claim that some of them are a hoax because some of them are supposed to be like famous, like Neanderthals or whatever. But many of the remains that have been found here have been authenticated. So whether it's people like laying their friends or family members to rest within this cave system, or simply folks for a very long time have been wandering into these caves and never leaving, we really don't know. What we do know is that they wind up in there and they're dead. Like most cave systems, you can visit these caves. So it's actually like 90 minutes away from Sacramento.
Really?
Which is a city that we have been to before and will be in again in the future. And it has a huge chamber in it. So like if you were to decide to go and check out the Moaning Caverns, there's a spot basically where everyone gathers that's just this 180-foot chamber within the cave system.
And they all just moan?
I'll get to the moaning thing in a little bit. It's just me moaning for like 5 minutes, so I'll let you know and you guys can skip forward. But it's like a gathering spot during tours, and there's a bunch of like different caves that branch off of this particular massive chamber. The chamber is so tall, as far as I can tell, this is true. I mean, it's off the place's website, but they state that you can fit the Statue of Liberty into it.
What?
And you may be asking, Adam, how tall is the Statue of Liberty? I don't know off the top of my head. To which I reply, I don't know. But it seemed pretty tall in that weird historical incident that happened in New York City on New Year's Eve of 1989 when the Ghostbusters had to bring it to life and have it hit that unnamed art museum that had the haunting painting of Vigo the Carpathian inside. We all remember when that happened. FYI, a replica of that painting does hang over my desk, and I'm looking at him right now. R.I.P. Vigo. It has a chimney. The chamber inside this cave system has a chimney that actually leads to the surface, a naturally formed one that was discovered during the gold rush in the 1800s. And 3 gold miners were searching the area for a vein of gold when they found the chimney. And by found, I mean fell in. All 3 fell in this chimney, and all 3 died. So that is like a historical thing. And after that, miners in the area, discovered the fact these guys had gone missing. They found the spot they had fallen into. They roped it off, and they recovered their bodies, apparently, just to make sure no one else would fall in. They did rope it off because people were still going to be searching for gold. Like, there's a lot of desperate people looking for, an opportunity to strike it rich. After they roped it off, though, other miners would still visit this area to search, and they would state that they would see miners coming dangerously close to this opening that they had roped off, only to see them fall in. And when they rush over there to check and see like what happened, the person would have disappeared. So they were basically like witnessing like the ghostly apparition of someone falling in, or they would look down in there and see like a miner that had like descended in there and be like, what the hell are you doing down there? And then they would just vanish. So
that's creepy.
For hundreds of years, people have been seeing ghosts in the Moaning Caverns, which is absolutely creepy. Folks that visit the caverns to this day state that even in the deepest parts of the cavern, they can hear the sound of a hammer hitting rock, as though the miners are forever trapped in the caves searching for gold. But some folks state that the ghosts of the miners never stop hitting the rocks to warn others that are visiting the caves of holes that they could fall into. So the closer that you come to the sound, you're actually getting towards a spot that's dangerous that you could fall into. So they like provide this weird service in the afterlife to prevent people from dying the way they did. They're actually called...
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, they're actually called the Tommyknockers. That's the name that's given to them, which is also the name of a Stephen King book or short story. I can't remember which. I've actually never read Tommyknockers. They've turned it into some movie.
For some reason, I was just like, it's the name I call my boobs.
You call your boobs Tommyknockers?
I could if I wanted to.
Who the fuck is Tommy? Because he's gonna die.
Oh my god.
Of course, the caverns get their name from a different sound, not the sound of Tommyknockers. They get their name from the wind moving through the caverns, like, you know, that have a massive chimney that leads to the surface, that produces a moaning sound that can actually be heard outside the entrance to the cave. So if you were to go park and decide, like, we're going to go to the Moaning Caverns, you'd hear them on your way there. And like when you're walking probably from the parking lot. But at the entrance, though, multiple witnesses have stated that they were freaked out because they saw a large cat creature, bigger than most wildcats, with spots on it and massive fangs hanging from its mouth. And this apparition that has been seen multiple times is known as
like a Sabretooth Tiger?
The Sabretooth Tiger, yeah.
Oh my god!
In case you were wondering, yes, the Sabretooth Tiger, when it was alive, did live in this region of California, so maybe that explains all of the human remains in the caves that have been discovered. I couldn't find any information about them having, like, teeth marks in the bones, but, I mean, who knows? This cave system could have been home to these, you know, massive cats that no longer exist. And this particular cave system, just like the last, was home to some bandits. It's always nice when the cave systems overlap with, like, hidden treasure. Most notably, a gentleman named Ezra Allen Miner, a.k.a. Bill Miner, a.k.a. the Gray Fox,
hot,
a.k.a. the Gentleman Bandit.
Hot.
I mean, those are some pretty solid fucking nicknames, Ezra. I'm pretty impressed that these are the things that you got called during your life. The Gentleman Bandit was someone who would steal from people, but had a very polite and charming demeanor while he did it. He robbed a stagecoach back in the day and fled to the Moaning Caverns, carefully hiding his loot before moving on to not be caught. He returned a week later once he had evaded capture, but his treasure was gone. Now, he apparently never located this treasure before passing on, and folks have searched the cavern and the surrounding area for a very long time, looking for the long-lost treasure that apparently did exist. This was an actual stagecoach that was robbed, and the money was never recovered. A woman named Marjorie Lehman apparently rappelled into an area of the Moaning Caverns to search, convinced that she was actually going to find this treasure. And while searching, she spotted a man in the cave system who seemed to be going through a set of rocks. And this man was very well dressed in 1800s-like attire. When he looked up and noticed he was being watched by Marjorie, he simply faded away.
He's like, you can't find my treasure.
It's just not there. I think someone else just stole it from him.
I think someone stole it too.
It freaked her out. And 8 years later, Marjorie was in an antique shop nearby and saw a picture of the man that she had seen on that day and actually screamed out loud. And the shopkeeper came over and asked her what was wrong. And she pointed to the photo and she told the guy the story. And he told her that's a picture of the Gentleman Bandit, like an authentic picture that was taken of him when he was still alive. And he told her, like, you know, it sells for $35 if you want it. So, of course, she bought it and apparently still has it on display to this day.
That's funny.
The last haunted cave system I want to cover is one that exists in the big hole in the earth known as the Grand Canyon, which apparently is an entrance to the underworld, according to some of the Native Americans from Arizona.
Really?
I mean, I covered that last week.
The Grand Canyon.
I mean, it's nice to know that you pay attention. Despite living less than 3 hours away from the Grand Canyon for the last decade, and there being tons of helicopter tours that are only like 30 minutes away out here in Vegas, I've never gone to the Grand Canyon. I think I've flown over it and maybe have seen it, but I can't really remember. But this story may be the thing that changes that and inspires us to go. There is a location in the Grand Canyon called the Grand Canyon Caverns, and it's apparently located along Route 66, which I'm told winds from Chicago to LA. That's according to the song lyrics.
Okay.
According to the internet, however, which never lies, 8 people have died or been laid to rest in the caverns over the last 72 years. The story with the Grand Canyon Caverns that I really like has to do with this guy in 1927 named Walter Peck. No, not the Walter Peck with the Environmental Protection Agency who tried to shut down the small paranormal investigation and elimination business known as the Ghostbusters in 1984.
God dang it.
That guy had no dick.
Second Ghostbusters reference.
I'm not the one who made this guy's name Walter Peck. This is 100% true. I just happened to have my first Ghostbusters joke, and then I found this, and I was like, holy shit, a second Ghostbusters reference that comes from history. It was just like meant to be. Anyways, this particular Walter Peck was a woodcutter who was walking to his friend's house one evening for a poker game and walking in the dark. While walking, he tripped and almost fell into this big funnel-shaped hole in the ground. He looked into it and said to himself, that would be fun to check out, but I have no rope, no light, and that's a big dark hole, so fuck that shit, end quote. And then he noped the fuck out and went to his poker game like a rational human being would. But while at the poker game, he told his friends, hey guys, I tripped and almost fell in this giant dark hole. Who wants to go check it out tomorrow? And they were all like, yeah, let's do that. So the next day, Walter went back with some rope and a lantern and a stupid friend who would let them lower him into the hole. I don't know what this guy's name is, but I'm guessing it was Ray. They wrapped the rope around him.
Oh my god.
This is totally true. Everything but the name. This is totally true. They wrapped the rope around him and lowered him 150 feet before he finally saw something. Can you guess what it was?
Was it pink slime?
He did yell out slime. It's a river of slime. Just kidding. However, if any of you guessed a river of slime, you are officially awesome and I love you. I'm guessing Garrett is the only other person to guess a river of slime. However, Ray was in a very large, dark cavern when his feet finally reached the bottom, so he lit up the lantern and he started exploring, and he noticed some sparkling coming off the rocks. So he went over and gathered some samples, and then he went back to the rope and pulled on it 3 times, which was the signal to bring me back up. And when he got to the surface, he showed them what he had found. A gold. He also told them
real gold, fool's gold.
On his descent and on his ascent back up, he noticed that about 50 feet below the surface, there was a small outcropping where there were 2 human skeletons and what looked like an old horse saddle from gold miners who had been searching the area long, long ago. So Walter was like, guys, stay right here. I'm a BRB. And he left. And he bought the property immediately. It's like, oh, there's gold here? This place belongs to me now. So he got a crew together and he went into the hole just figuring, let's go mine this fucking gold so I can be super rich. So he gets down there. Lo and behold, the gold that he thought was gold was actually fool's gold, meaning not real and not valuable. And the place Ray had been was filled with rust, not gold. However, the local newspaper heard the story about the 2 bodies and decided to run a story stating that the bones that were found were of 2 cavemen from prehistoric times. They conveniently left out that there was a horse saddle so people wouldn't question it and know it was bullshit. Walter Peck, who was very disappointed that he was not going to be rich, said, hey, you know what's always been profitable? Exploiting idiots and people who have been lied to. So he made a winch system and a basic bitch elevator and charged people 25 cents each to go down and view the quote-unquote cavemen. And they came from all around. And in case you were wondering, 25 cents in 1927 is like $4.25 today. So each person that went down to look at that, he was making his money back. And eventually he kind of built up this park system that people could come visit, and the park area built around it. Visitors state that all throughout the cave, especially at the entrance and at the bottom of the elevator as it currently exists, you can see a person occasionally who resembles Walter Peck at random times before he just disappears and vanishes into thin air.
Wow.
Today, there's actually an inn 220 feet underground where you can drink, eat, and yes, even spend the night in the haunted caverns. People who visit and stay overnight report seeing people walking around the cave long after the guests have left. Whispers can be heard coming from deep inside the cave, and apparitions that appear to be Native Americans can be seen roaming in the darkness. Chanting can be heard coming from unoccupied areas of the cave as well at all times of the night, and if you would like to subject yourself to this, you can. You can stay in this inn 220 feet below the surface of the earth in this cave system for $1,000 a night for 2 people, with an additional $100 per person, up to a total of 6 people. What a steal.
What a steal.
You can spend $1,600 for a single night in a cave.
Is food and drink included?
No, absolutely not. There's a restaurant there called the Grotto that you can go to, but you have to pay for that as well. You can also take a ghost tour if you would like to, and those are apparently still running because I almost booked one. That will at times be completely in the dark. That appears to run about $40. So if you're brave and you have $40 to waste and you're near the Grand Canyon area, give that a shot. I'll go ahead and say if we hit like 250 patrons, that sounds about right, we will totally stay the night in this haunted cave. Even if Robin says no, we're going to make that happen. So we're at like 85 patrons right now, I think. So go on over there to patreon.com/scarishpodcast and sign up.
I hate you.
There are tons of cave systems all over the United States, and there are only a few that I have covered in this episode, but I may have to cover caves again on a future topic. These are the 3 that I felt had like solid histories and stories and kind of explanations of why these caves would be haunted, and I really enjoyed reading about them, so I hope you enjoyed listening to them. And that, my spooky friends, is Haunted Caves number 1.
I think haunted caves are genuinely fascinating.
Yeah, I've been into some cave systems in Kentucky and Tennessee.
Really?
And it's really cool, but at the same time, it's pretty creepy. Like, there was a tour that you could take, which is like deep diving in the cave system that my friend, I think it was like our junior or senior year in high school when we went, and he really wanted to do the deep dive tour. And they said like your chest width could not be more than 37 inches. So you had to like measure your chest, like if you were getting like a suit jacket or a bra or whatever. So like it was senior year because they measured my chest and I was like 41 inches. My friend's like, why are you so thick? And I'm like, 41 is not that thick. I'm sorry, you're tiny. I was like, you can still go. Like, I'll stay up top and, go get the police once you eventually go missing. I have not been below like a 42 in my entire adult life. So if you're 37 or below, you can do those tours. But those things are all over the country. So if you have a national park near you that has a cave system, check it out. Or maybe just see whether or not it's haunted. I'm guessing that most of them are going to be called haunted caves, just like like every hotel that's older than like 5 years is considered to be haunted at this point as well. But yeah, that was Haunted Caves number 1.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It was good.
You're welcome. Yeah, I think that's everything we have for episode 240. So if you have a story you would like to send to us, it doesn't have to be about haunted caves or disappeared people. It can be if you would like. It could be supernatural, paranormal, coincidental, true crime, whatever the case may be. You can email storytime@scaryish.com or go over to our website, scaryish.com, click on Contact Us, fill out that form. It comes directly to us. You can also hit us up on our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Twitter is @scarishpod, and Instagram is @scarishpodcast. We would love to hear from you. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scarishpodcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $1. You can also go to ko-fi.com/scarishpodcast. And those are one-time donations. All your donations go to helping us, keep this podcast going, pay for our background fees, like paying for podcast hosting and all that fun stuff.
Podcast hosting, websites, editing software,
websites,
microphones. There's so much stuff that you wouldn't imagine that you do have to buy and pay for and have subscription fees. But anyways, we sincerely appreciate all the support we get, even if you're not a patron or you donate on Ko-fi. Like if you're listening to the episode, if you're sharing it with friends, it really does help. It means the world to us. So thank you so much for that. But yeah, I think that's everything we have. So Robin, why don't you go ahead and sign us out?
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.